Okay, let's unpack this. You love watching movies and TV shows, right? I mean, who doesn't? It's one of the best ways to just relax, maybe escape for a bit, connect with different stories, different cultures.
Absolutely. It's universal.
And if you're learning English or trying to get better, you've probably heard it a million times, or maybe you just feel it yourself that watching these shows should be a really great way to learn.
Yeah, it seems like a perfect tool. You're doing something enjoyable anyway. Why not learn at the same time?
Exactly. So you settle in, maybe you're excited about that new series everyone's talking about, or you're rewatching an old favorite, you hit play, and then boom, the dialogue just flies past.
Whoosh, like a bullet train, as you said.
Yeah,
Native speakers often sound like they're swallowing half their words, don't they?
they really do.
Yep.
And they connect sounds in ways that, well, they definitely weren't in my old textbooks.
Definitely not.
And even if you've got the subtitles right there staring you in the face, it still feels like you're kind of lost in this maze of words, missing the jokes or the subtle points or just the sheer speed of it all. That feeling, that frustration, it's incredibly common. That gap between wanting to understand everything and just catching maybe half of it, especially with fast, natural spoken English, that's probably the biggest hurdle for so many
It
learners.
really is.
It truly is. You know, the difference between, say, a language classroom environment, which is controlled, or maybe a learning app, and then the chaos of real spoken English in authentic media, it can be huge.
Yeah, it's staggering.
You suddenly hear slang you've never encountered, idioms that make zero literal sense, that rapid-fire delivery we mentioned,
Yeah.
and those famous reductions in connected speech patterns.
Ah, like going to becoming gonna.
Exactly, or want to becoming wanna, or even something like did you eat, sounding more like Jeep.
All
If
right.
your brain is only wired for the slow, clear textbook version, it can't keep up.
It stalls out.
Right. And often when faced with that speed, the brain does the easiest thing. It just focuses on reading the subtitles, which unfortunately bypasses the really crucial work of training your ears. Right. So you feel like you're learning because, hey, you're following the story, you know what's happening, but are you really improving your listening skills, your
No.
speaking skills? Maybe not as much as you could be.
That's the core question.
So what if what if we could actually turn that time you already spend watching the stuff you enjoy into a genuinely effective, a systematic way to boost your English?
That's exactly what we're aiming for in this deep dive. We're taking all those insights from the source material you shared on this, and we're going to distill the actionable strategies, the practical techniques that really shift viewing from passive to active learning.
Yeah, we're not just going to vaguely say, oh, watch TV in English. That's not helpful. We're going deep into how to watch it specifically so that it actually measurably helps you learn.
And this deep dive is really designed for you, the listener, someone who sees that potential in movies and TV, but needs that clear roadmap to actually unlock it. We'll start by guiding you through that critical first step.
Oh.
How do you choose content that's actually right for your current level, so you avoid that frustration or, frankly, sometimes boredom?
Okay, good starting point. Then we'll dive into the mechanics, right? The specific techniques the sources recommend to train your ears to actually decode and understand that fast, natural spoken English.
Yes, tackling the mumbling, the connected speech, all of that, head on.
And the big subtitle question, are they helping or hurting? We'll look at how to use them effectively, like a tool, not just a crutch your brain leans on.
Exactly, using them strategically.
And finally, how do we take all that listening work and turn it into better speaking, using the dialogue from the shows themselves?
By the end of this, you should have a really clear, practical, step-by-step method. You'll know how to pick your shows, how to listen actively for the best results, how to make subtitles work for you, and how to practice speaking using the content.
So your next movie night or binge-watching session, it could actually be a really productive and still enjoyable step forward in your English learning.
That's the goal.
Okay, so let's ditch that feeling of being overwhelmed or just passively watching. Let's dive into the absolute foundation, according to all the stuff is. Figuring out what you should even be watching. Because picking the wrong show, that's often where the struggle really begins, isn't it?
It really is. Choosing the right material is foundational. It sounds so simple, but honestly, a lot of learners get stuck right here.
Yeah, I can see that. You just grab whatever's popular, right?
Yeah.
Or what your friends recommend or what Netflix throws at you.
Which is totally understandable. You want to watch things that genuinely interest you.
Yeah.
But, and this is the key point, If the language level isn't a good match for where you are right now proficiency-wise, you can hit that wall of frustration really fast.
Right. It's like trying to, I don't know, learn calculus before you've mastered basic algebra. If the dialogue is just too complex, too fast, full of words you don't know or grammar you haven't seen, you just feel lost.
Completely lost. And then what happens? You get discouraged. Maybe you switch the subtitles to your native language.
Which, let's be honest, massively limits the English learning potential.
Absolutely. Or you just give up on the show altogether. It
Yeah.
stops being fun and starts feeling like a chore.
And the flip side is true too, right? If it's too easy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If the content is too simple, maybe it's a show designed for very young kids, but you're already an intermediate speaker, you might understand everything, which feels good for a second.
Yeah, like, hey, I got this.
But you're not actually encountering much new language. There's no challenge, so there's no real growth. You might get bored, tune out mentally, and again, the learning opportunity is missed. The sources really stress finding this perfect balance.
Okay, so how do you find that balance? It sounds tricky.
Well, they offer a fantastic, really practical test you can use. It takes maybe a minute. It's called the 50-70% rule.
The 50-70% rule. Okay, how does that work?
It's wonderfully simple. Find a short bit of the movie or show you're thinking about watching, maybe just 30 seconds or a minute at most.
Okay.
Watch or listen to that little clip, but crucially, without any subtitles, no safety net,
Right, just listening.
just listening. And after that minute, ask yourself honestly, did I understand roughly 50 to 70% of what was actually said? Not the plot from visuals, but the dialogue.
50 to 70%. Why that specific range? Why not say 80% or 40?
That range is the sweet spot for learning. If you understand at least 50%, you're catching enough familiar words, basic phrases, maybe the general grammar to get the gist.
Okay, so you're not totally lost. You have some context.
Exactly. You probably understand who's talking about what or the basic emotion of the scene. That context prevents that awful feeling of being completely adrift at sea. You have enough anchors to hold on to.
Got it. That makes sense. It gives you a foothold.
And that foothold, that context from what you do understand, allows you to start inferring, guessing, or maybe absorbing the meaning of the parts you don't immediately get. It's like having, say, half the pieces of a jigsaw puzzle.
Yeah, you can start to see the picture and figure out where the other pieces might fit.
Precisely. And this is where the 70% upper limit comes in.
Yeah.
If you understand more than 70%, it might actually be too easy for effective learning.
Ah, okay. So you need that gap, that unknown part.
Yes, you need that 30 to 50% that is new or challenging. That could be new vocabulary, maybe some idioms you haven't heard, cultural references, faster speech than you're used to, or maybe more complex sentences.
And that gap, that challenging part, is where the real learning happens.
That's where the magic is.
Yeah.
You're being exposed to language just beyond your current comfort zone. But because you understand the other 50-70%, you have enough scaffolding, enough context to help you process and actually learn those unfamiliar bits.
So it's challenging enough to push you, but not so hard that it just becomes frustrating guesswork.
Exactly. It keeps you engaged and actively learning rather than demoralized. It's like weightlifting, maybe. You need a weight that's heavy enough to actually build muscle.
But not so heavy you just drop it instantly or hurt yourself.
Precisely. This 50-70% rule helps you find that optimal learning weight.
That's a great analogy. And the sources also give some specific show and movie recommendations for different levels, right, as a starting point.
They do, which is really helpful before you even apply the 50-70% test. They break it down into beginner, intermediate, and advanced categories.
Okay, let's walk through those. What do they suggest for beginners?
For beginners, the absolute priorities are clarity, maybe slightly slower speech, and straightforward plots with lots of visual support. So the sources strongly recommend animated movies. Think Toy Story, Finding Nemo, maybe Studio Ghibli films dubbed in English.
Why animation specifically?
Well, a few reasons. The characters usually speak with incredibly clear pronunciation. Voice actors often enunciate very well. The dialogue itself is often simpler, focusing on common words and basic sentence structures. Plus, the visual storytelling is usually very strong. Even if you miss some words, the actions, the character expressions, they help you follow the plot.
Yeah, I can picture that. Like in Toy Story, a line like, "Buzz, you're flying," is pretty clear, and you see him falling. Or, falling with style.
Exactly. Simple grammar, common words, strong visual context. Perfect for beginners. Another good area is sitcoms that focus on everyday conversations. Friends is a classic example. Or maybe Modern Family.
Why sitcoms?
because the dialogue revolves around common, universal situations, dating, family stuff, work gossip, hanging out. While it's natural speech, the vocabulary tends to be repeated across episodes and relates to things most people can understand. Plus, a lot of the humor is situational. You see the funny face someone pulls or the awkward situation they're in, which helps comprehension, even if you don't catch every single word of the witty banter.
Okay, so the context helps a lot there too. What else for beginners?
For absolute beginners, or maybe younger learners, the sources even suggest very short, simple episodes made for native English-speaking kids. They mention Peppa Pig or Bluey.
Really? Like toddler shows?
Don't knock them till you try them for language learning. These shows are actually treasures for beginners. The language is extremely clear, very deliberate, often quite repetitive, which is great for learning. Concepts are explained simply and tied directly to what's happening on screen.
And they're short, right?
Very short, maybe 5–10 minutes an episode. That makes them perfect for repeated watching without feeling overwhelmed. Manageable chunks of learning.
Okay, that makes sense for building a foundation. What about intermediate learners? People who have the basics but struggle with faster, more natural stuff.
Right, for intermediate, you can handle a bit more speed and complexity, but clear context is still helpful. The sources suggest TV dramas or dramedies with natural conversations. Examples given were Brooklyn Nine-Nine or The Office.
Ah, okay, so still relatable settings.
Exactly. These shows feature more dynamic dialogue, faster back and forth, a wider range of vocabulary than beginner stuff. But the settings, a police station, and office provide a strong framework. You're dealing with more complex language, yes, but it's usually rooted in understandable everyday scenarios, even if they're exaggerated for comedy.
The human interactions are key.
Yes, the humor, the relationships, they often rely on recognizable human behavior, which aids understanding. Light comedies are also mentioned in this bracket, like The Big Bang Theory or How I Met Your Mother.
Big Bang Theory has some science jargon, though, doesn't it?
It does, but the core of the show, the character interactions, the relationship plots, the everyday problems, that's all driven by very natural, engaging conversational English. The stories pull you in, and the dialogue, while witty and sometimes fast, isn't usually overly dense or abstract outside of the specific science jokes, which you can often let slide.
Okay. And interestingly, the sources also mentioned reality shows, like MasterChef or The Great British Bake Off. That surprised me a bit.
Yeah, it might seem counterintuitive because the speech can be very spontaneous, unscripted moments, but the format of these shows is highly structured and quite repetitive.
How so?
Well, think about it. You constantly hear clear instructions. Okay, bakers, you have 2 hours. You get descriptions of food or techniques. You have critiques from the judges using specific evaluative language. The language is tied directly to what you are seeing. Someone kneading dough, piping icing, the look on a judge's face when they taste something.
Ah, so the visuals provide massive context for the spontaneous language.
Exactly. You can often guess the meaning of an adjective describing a cake. Oh, it's a bit dense, based on how it looks, or the judge's disappointed expression. It makes the real-world language much more accessible than just listening to a random unscripted conversation with no context.
That's a really good point. You learn useful descriptive words and phrases for opinions or processes. Okay, so what about advanced learners? People who feel pretty comfortable but want to handle really fast, complex English.
For advanced learners, the goal is definitely to push yourself. Seek out challenges. Rapid delivery, complex vocabulary, intricate sentence structures, maybe specialized topics. The sources recommend movies known for fast, realistic speech. They listed examples like Inception or The Social Network.
Right, movies where the dialogue is really zipping along.
Exactly. These films often feature authentic, rapid-fire dialogue that mimics how native speakers might talk in high-pressure or very fast-paced situations. The vocabulary can be sophisticated, the sentence structures varied and complex, reflecting nuanced arguments or quick thinking.
What else for advanced?
News programs and documentaries are excellent. Things like BBC News or watching TED Talks. These expose you to more formal styles of English, often quite fast delivery, and a huge range of vocabulary across all sorts of topics: science, politics, economics, culture. You hear different accents, too, and learn how English is used to discuss complex, real-world issues.
That makes sense for broadening vocabulary and understanding different registers.
And finally, complex TV dramas. Shows like Breaking Bad or Sherlock were mentioned. These often have intricate, multi-layered plots that are driven by very sophisticated dialogue.
How so? What makes them challenging?
Characters might use subtle language, a lot of subtext, sarcasm, irony. They might rely on implicit cultural knowledge that you need to pick up on. The vocabulary can be challenging, the sentence structure is quite involved, and the pace demanding. Understanding these really requires high-level linguistic skill, plus cultural and contextual awareness. They push advanced learners right to their limits.
Wow, okay. So there's a clear progression. What's the immediate action step then?
The concrete step for you, listening right now, is to use this guide and that 50-70% rule. First, think, which of these levels, beginner, intermediate, advanced, sounds most like me right now? Which types of shows in that category genuinely interest me? That interest part is crucial for motivation.
Right. Don't pick something you'll hate just because it's the right level.
Absolutely not. Browse your streaming service. Look at your DVDs, check YouTube, whatever you use. Find a show or movie in your target category that actually looks appealing. Then find a short clip, maybe a minute long. Watch it without subtitles. Do the 50-70% test. Honestly, does it feel like it's in that sweet spot?
And if it is?
Great. That's your content to start practicing with. If it feels way too hard, maybe try a show from a slightly easier category first. If you understood almost everything, maybe bump it up a level and try something more challenging.
So it's about finding that personalized fit.
Finding that fit is the non-negotiable first step, because once you have content that challenges you appropriately, then you can actually start training your ears and your brain to handle that fast, natural English. Which, let's face it, is often the biggest barrier for people.
It really is. You feel like you know the words on paper, you know the grammar rules, but then a native speaker says something like, I don't know what you're talking about, and it sounds like a completely different language compared to the textbook. I do not know what you are talking about. Why is it so hard to catch?
Well, as the source material explains very clearly, it's because native speakers, when they're talking naturally, conversationally, they just don't pronounce every single word distinctly and separately. It's not efficient.
Right, it would sound robotic.
Totally robotic. Instead, they link words together smoothly, they drop sounds, they reduce vowel sounds, and they use contractions and informal shortcuts all the time. This whole phenomenon is what linguists call connected speech and reductions.
Okay, connected speech and reductions, like the examples you gave earlier. Gonna, wanna.
Exactly. Going to becomes gonna, want to becomes wanna. Have to often sounds like have to. Did you can squish into didja. What to you might sound like wadaya or even whatcha.
Let's pause on that for a second, because I think this is absolutely key for learners to grasp. Your brain, when you learned English from a book or maybe a slower teacher, expects to hear distinct sound units. What do you want to do tonight? 5 clear chunks.
Right, that's the input it's been trained on.
But what your ear actually picks up in a movie is often one long blended sound. What I want auto tonight? Maybe 3 chunks. Maybe even feels like one blur. If you've only ever learned the separate written words, your ear literally isn't trained to recognize that blended sound as meaning the same thing.
Precisely. Your brain hears it as just noise or something foreign because the separate pieces it's listening for aren't there in the way it expects. It's not that the speakers are using different words usually, it's that they're performing these phonetic transformations on the words you know when they speak quickly and naturally.
But the good news is you can train your ear to decode these transformations, right? It's not impossible.
Absolutely not impossible, it just takes practice. The sources lay out a very systematic 3-step listening exercise designed specifically for this purpose. It's simple in concept, it does require a bit of patience, but it's incredibly effective.
Okay, let's break down this 3-step exercise. Step 1.
Step 1. Take that short clip you selected. Remember, the sources suggest keeping it really short for this exercise, maybe just 10 to 15 seconds. That's maybe 1 or 2 sentences.
Okay, super short.
Yes. Watch or listen to that clip without any subtitles, just pure listening. Now, the goal here is absolutely not to understand everything. Manage your expectations. Your only job on this first pass is to listen for the sounds, the rhythm, the flow, and just try to catch any familiar words or phrases you can recognize. See what your ear picks up naturally, without pressure.
So it's like a baseline check. What can I get just by listening cold?
Exactly. It's like a little diagnostic. It shows you what your ear can already process at native speed.
All right.
Then step 2.
Step 2.
Watch or listen to that exact same 10-15 second clip again. But this time, turn on the English subtitles.
Ah, okay. So now we bring in the text.
Now you bring in the text. And this is the crucial learning phase. This is where the decoding happens.
What should you be doing during this step?
As you listen again while reading the English subtitles at the same time, you are actively comparing what you see written on the screen with the sounds you hear coming from the speaker. You see the distinct words, what do you want to do tonight, printed out.
And you hear, what I want auto tonight, coming through your headphones.
Exactly. And your brain starts to make the connection. It maps that blurry, fast sound to the clear written words it represents. You have that aha moment. Okay, that fast sound corresponds to these words I know.
So it's like you're creating a new entry in your mental dictionary, linking the sound you hear in real life to the word you learned on paper.
Precisely. This step directly exposes the gap between written English and spoken English. You start noticing how words link together, like maybe do you becomes do you, or even just a J sound. You notice how sounds change want to becoming wanna. You hear how vowels often get reduced in unstressed words, like to often sounds like ta, or for it sounds like fair.
So you need to be actively noticing these things, not just passively reading along.
Active noticing is absolutely key here. You're training your ear to recognize the words you already know, even when they sound quite different in a fast stream of speech, compared to when they're said slowly and carefully on their own. You're giving your ear the key to unlock fast speech.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So listen without, then listen with subtitles, and actively compare sound to text. What's step 3?
Step 3. Watch or listen to that same 10-15-second clip one more time, but without the subtitles again.
Okay, back to just listening. Why?
Now, you're armed with the knowledge from step 2. You know exactly what words were spoken, and you've just actively paid attention to how they sounded when connected. So the goal in step 3 is to focus purely on the audio and see if you can now recognize those words and phrases just by listening, without the visual crutch of the text.
So it's like testing yourself. Did that mapping I did in step 2 actually stick? Can I hear it now?
Exactly. You're practicing recognizing the natural connected forms of the words purely through sound. And the sources recommend repeating these 3 steps. Listen without, listen with, listen without, again with the same short clip.
How many times?
As many times as it takes. Loot it. Watch it 5 times, 10 times. The goal is to repeat it until you feel you can understand most of that 10-15-second clip just by listening alone.
And keeping the clip super short is important for that repetition, right?
Absolutely vital. It makes the repetition manageable and not tedious. You're not trying to decode an entire 5-minute scene this way. You're doing focused, intense practice on a tiny, digestible chunk of language. This focused, repetitive exposure, where you're actively comparing sound to text, is incredibly effective at rewiring your brain to process those fast, connected sounds in real time.
It really sounds like targeted training for your ears, like doing specific drills in sports.
Yeah.
You isolate one movement, one skill, and practice it over and over.
That's a perfect analogy. You're training your ear and brain to recognize specific sound patterns until they become automatic. Doing this regularly, even if it's just for 10 or 15 minutes a day, focusing on maybe 2 or 3 short clips, can dramatically improve your listening comprehension for natural, fast speech over time.
And this whole exercise really highlights the next big topic, doesn't it? Subtitles, how to use them properly.
Yes, because as we've seen, they are absolutely essential for step 2 of that listening exercise. But relying on them all the time, just having them on constantly while you watch everything, that can actually become a major roadblock to improving your listening skills.
That's the paradox, isn't it? They feel so helpful because you can follow the plot, understand what's going on.
Right. But your brain is clever and maybe a bit lazy sometimes. It sees the text on the screen and thinks, oh, great, I don't need to work so hard to decipher that messy audio stream. I could just read.
It takes the path of least resistance.
Exactly. It defaults to reading, and that crucial ear training, the skill of processing the audio alone, just doesn't happen as effectively. But, and this is important, the sources are very clear. Used correctly, subtitles are not a crutch. They are a powerful tool.
Okay, so how do we use them correctly? What's the strategy?
The sources suggest a method that integrates subtitles strategically, often involving watching a segment multiple times, similar to the listening exercise, but maybe for slightly longer chunks. Step 1 in this specific subtitle method is to watch a section or a scene, perhaps a bit longer now, maybe 1 to 2 minutes, with the English subtitles turned on right from the start.
Okay, wait. This is different from the listening exercise where step 1 was without subtitles. Here, you start with English subtitles. Why?
Good question. The purpose here in this method isn't primarily diagnostic listening. It's more about building comprehension and connecting sound to text right away, especially for learning new vocabulary and expressions in context.
Okay, so it's about understanding the content first.
Yes, and learning. As you listen and read simultaneously, you see how words are spelled, how dialogue is punctuated. More importantly, you encounter new words or maybe unfamiliar phrases embedded right there in a real conversation. You see the word, you hear how it's pronounced, and you see the situation it's being used in, all at the same time.
So you're leveraging the subtitles to make sure you get what's happening and also to learn new language organically, seeing it used in its natural habitat.
Precisely. This contextual learning, seeing and hearing a word used in a real situation is far more memorable and effective than just seeing a word on a vocabulary list or a flashcard. You're getting the meaning, the pronunciation, and the usage all bundled together.
Okay, that makes sense. So step one, watch a 1-2 minute scene with English subtitles to understand and learn. What's step two?
Step 2. Watch that exact same 1-2 minute section again. But this time,
Turn the subtitles off.
turn them off. Now it's pure listening practice again.
But now you have the advantage of having already understood the content and seen the script in step one.
Exactly. You're no longer struggling with basic comprehension. Now you are forced to rely solely on your ears. You know what words are being spoken because you just saw them. Your task now is to actively listen and see if you can recognize those words and phrases based only on how they sound in natural, connected speech. This step is crucial for building that automatic recognition of spoken language without needing the text.
Okay, watch with and watch without. Is there a step three in this subtitle method?
Yes, step 3 introduces a technique we've touched on, but it's highlighted here again because it bridges listening and speaking. Shadowing.
Shadowing. Okay, what exactly is that again?
Shadowing simply means imitating what you hear, like your shadow follows you. In this context, after you've watched the scene with and without subtitles, you might pick a specific line or a short phrase. You pause the video right after the character says it, and then you immediately repeat it out loud.
Just repeat the words.
Not just the words. The goal is to copy the original speaker's pronunciation, their rhythm, their stress patterns, their intonation as accurately as you possibly can. Try to sound exactly like them.
Okay, so it's like mimicry.
Yes, very focused mimicry.
Yeah.
The source gives the example, "I'll be there in 5 minutes." Now, if you just read that, you might say each word clearly and evenly. "I will be there in 5 minutes."
Which sounds pretty unnatural.
Very unnatural. A native speaker is much more likely to say it quickly, linking words like, "I'll be there in 5 minutes." Maybe the "in 5" blends together, the stress falls strongly on 5 and minutes. Shadowing this line means you pause and you try to say, "I'll be there in 5 minutes." With that same flow, that same rhythm, that same emphasis.
So you're training your mouth muscles as well as your ears.
Exactly. You're training your mouth, your tongue, your vocal cords to produce English sounds and musicality more naturally. You're paying attention to the melody of English, not just the individual words.
That sounds really powerful. So this whole subtitle method is watch with English subs for comprehension and learning, watch again without subs for pure listening practice, and then maybe shadow some key lines to work on pronunciation and rhythm.
Yes, it's a really effective cycle. The subtitles provide the initial understanding and link sound to text. Removing them forces your ear to work. And shadowing immediately applies what you've learned about the sound and rhythm by making you produce it yourself. Input leads directly to output practice.
Which is the perfect transition, really, to the final big piece. How to actively use movies and TV shows, not just to get better at listening, but to directly improve your speaking skills. You've trained your ears, you're recognizing authentic language. Now how do you get your own mouth to say it like that?
That's the logical next step, isn't it?
Yeah.
You've absorbed all this authentic input, now you need to practice activating it, producing it yourself. The sources suggest 2 really effective speaking exercises that build directly on the content you're already watching and working with.
Okay, what are they?
The first one is shadowing, which we just discussed as part of the subtitle method, but it's so important. It's also presented as a standalone speaking practice technique.
Right, so you can do shadowing anytime with any clip, just purely for speaking practice.
Absolutely. You don't need to do the whole subtitle routine first if your main goal in that moment is speaking. Just choose any short sentence or phrase from the movie or show you're watching. Listen to how the character says. Really listen closely. Pay attention to everything. The pronunciation of each sound, how the words flow together, which syllables get stressed, the overall rhythm and speed, even the intonation. Is it a question, an exclamation? Is it flat? Is it sarcastic?
Okay, really analyze the sound.
Yes. Then pause the video and try to imitate it as perfectly as you possibly can. Mimic everything.
It sounds simple, just copy, but I imagine getting it perfectly right is actually quite challenging.
It is. And that challenge is precisely where the learning happens. Trying to match the native speaker's sounds and rhythm forces you to notice details you might otherwise miss. The source uses the phrase, "Hey, long time no see," as an example.
Okay, a common greeting.
Right. If you just read those words off a page, you might say them quite slowly and flatly. Hey, long time no see. But think about how a native speaker usually says it when they bump into a friend they haven't seen in ages.
It's usually faster, more upbeat, right? Like, hey, long time no see, with more energy.
Exactly. It's probably faster, more cheerful, maybe with extra emphasis on hey and perhaps see, and it often has a slightly rising, friendly intonation. Shadowing forces you to try and replicate that entire package. The speed, the stress pattern, the intonation, the way long time might link smoothly into no see.
So it's not just about repeating the dictionary pronunciation of the words. It's about practicing the whole performance of the language in that specific context.
That's a great way to put it. You're building muscle memory in your mouth for the specific sounds, rhythm, and flow of natural English speech. Doing this regularly, even just for a few minutes each day, with different types of lines, different characters, different emotions, it can significantly improve your pronunciation, your intonation, and your overall fluency. It helps you sound less textbook and more natural.
Okay, shadowing is one key speaking exercise. What's the second one the sources recommend?
The second one is role play. This takes it a step further because it involves practicing a conversational exchange, even though it's scripted.
Role play. How does that work with a movie?
You pick a short conversation or a scene from the movie or show, one that has dialogue between two or more characters, maybe a minute long, like we discussed before.
Okay, find a little back and forth scene.
Exactly. First, you'd watch and listen to that scene, maybe using the listening or subtitle techniques we talked about, until you understand it pretty well. Then you choose one character. You decide, okay, I'm going to practice being character B.
All right, I'm character B. Then what?
Then you play the scene. When character A says their line, you pause the video immediately after they finish speaking, and then you say character B's line out loud.
Ah, okay. So I'm essentially having a conversation with the character on screen, delivering my lines in the pauses.
Precisely. And the goal isn't just to read character B's words from memory or subtitles. The real goal is to try and match the original actor's delivery of that line, their tone, their emotion, their speed.
So if character A asks a really angry question and character B responds defensively, I should try to sound defensive when I say B's line.
Yes, try to capture that feeling. If character B was hesitant, try to deliver the line with that same hesitation, maybe a slightly slower pace. If they were excited, try to match that energy.
Wow, that feels much closer to actual conversation practice than just repeating single lines in isolation.
It really is. You're practicing responding in context. You're delivering lines as part of a dialogue flow. You're thinking about the emotional context and trying to convey that with your voice. It helps you internalize how sentences fit together in a natural back and forth.
It sounds like it bridges the gap between just mimicking sounds and actually using language communicatively, even if it's scripted communication.
Exactly. By practicing these role plays, you get used to the rhythm of conversational turn-taking. You practice responding naturally, even with a script. And you get comfortable embodying the language with the appropriate feeling and speed. It's a fantastic way to build confidence for when you have to have real, unscripted conversations later on.
So regular practice with both of these shadowing specific lines to nail the pronunciation and rhythm, and role-playing short scenes to practice delivery in context, that seems like a really direct way to improve speaking using the shows you watch.
It is. You're leveraging authentic models, the actors, and turning all that listening input into active practice output. You're turning those hours you enjoy watching into tangible improvements in how you sound when you speak English.
That's fantastic. Okay, we have covered a ton of ground here, from figuring out what to watch to training your ears for fast speech, using subtitles smartly, and now practicing speaking. Let's maybe just quickly recap the main actionable techniques before we wrap this section up.
Good idea. So if you've ever felt that frustration of the dialogue just flying by or wished you sounded a bit more natural yourself, the key takeaway from the sources is that there's a clear, integrated approach you can use. It starts with smart selection.
Right, step one, choose the right level. Use that 50-70% understanding rule. Watch a short clip without subtitles. See if you understand about half to two-thirds of the dialogue. That's your sweet spot.
And remember those starting point recommendations. Beginners, lean towards clarity and simplicity. Animated films like Toy Story, everyday sitcoms like Friends, or simple kids shows like Peppa Pig.
Intermediate learners, you can handle more natural conversation. Try light dramas or comedies like Brooklyn Nine-Nine or The Big Bang Theory, or even structured reality shows like MasterChef.
And advanced learners, you need to push yourselves. Go for movies with rapid-fire dialogue like Inception, news or documentaries like TED Talks, or complex dramas like Sherlock.
Okay, once you've got your perfectly chosen content, what's next?
Train your ears systematically. Use that three-step listening exercise on super short clips, just 10-15 seconds. Step 1. Listen without subtitles, just catch what you can. Step 2. Listen with English subtitles, actively comparing the sound to the text, noticing the connected speech, the reductions. Step 3. Listen without subtitles again, testing your recognition. Repeat until you get most of it by ear.
Then use subtitles strategically, not constantly. One good method is for slightly longer sections, maybe 1-2 minutes. Watch with English subtitles first to understand and learn new words and context. Then watch that same bit without subtitles to force your listening skills.
And weave shadowing into your practice. That means mimicking what you hear, pausing and repeating lines, trying to copy the pronunciation, rhythm, and intonation exactly. This helps both listening recognition and your own speaking fluency.
And for dedicated speaking practice, keep shadowing specific lines to nail the sounds and rhythm, like practicing, "Hey, long time no see," and try roleplay. Pick short dialogue scenes, pause after one character, and deliver the other character's line yourself, matching their tone and speed.
Exactly. These aren't just theories, they're practical, repeatable exercises.
Yes.
If you consistently apply these techniques, watching movies and TV genuinely transforms from just passive entertainment into a fun, engaging, and incredibly effective way to learn English. You're actively breaking down the language and then practicing producing it yourself.
All right, you've got the roadmap, you've got the tools. Now it's time to actually put them into action, right?
Sure.
So based on everything we've just discussed, here is your challenge, something concrete you can try today.
Yes, your challenge for today. It's got 3 simple steps designed to integrate that listening and speaking practice using just a tiny piece of content. Step 1. Choose a really short clip from a movie or TV show you like. Remember our advice. Keep it brief, maybe just 1 or 2 sentences, definitely no more than 10 or 15 seconds long. Pick something that catches your ear, maybe a line you thought was funny or dramatic, or just a common phrase you'd like to be able to say naturally.
Okay, step 1. Pick a tiny clip. Step 2.
Step 2. Listen to that clip 3 times, applying that core listening exercise we detailed. First time, without any subtitles, just listen, see what you catch. Second time, listen with the English subtitles on. Really focus here, look at the text, listen to the sound, notice where going to becomes gonna, or how words seem to disappear into each other. Connect the sound to the words. Third time, listen without subtitles again. See how much more you understand just by ear now after doing that comparison in step 2.
Listen without, listen with, listen without again. Got it. And step 3.
Step 3. From that very short clip, pick just 1 sentence. Just 1. Pause the video right after the character says it, and then shadow it. Say it out loud. Try your absolute best to copy everything, the exact pronunciation, the rhythm, the speed, even the emotion or tone in their voice. Practice saying it maybe 2 or 3 times. Really focus on making your mouth produce those sounds just like the native speaker did. Don't just say the words. Try to replicate the entire sound wave.
Okay, choose a clip, do the 3 listening steps, then shadow 1 sentence. That sounds very doable. And we'd genuinely love to hear how this challenge goes for you. After you've tried it, maybe take just a minute to think about it. What show or movie did you pick? What was the specific sentence you shadowed? And what part felt the hardest? Was it catching the words the first time? Was it noticing the changes with the subtitles? Or was it getting your mouth to actually make the same sounds when you shadowed?
Yeah, and did you learn anything specific? Maybe a new word, or finally understanding how a common phrase really sounds when people say it fast? Sharing your experience, even just writing it down for yourself, can really help solidify the learning.
And here's something powerful to consider, drawing directly from the source material. Think about how much rich, real-world, actually usable English is packed into just those few seconds of dialogue you worked on.
It's amazing when you stop and analyze it. The vocabulary, the grammar in action, the natural speech patterns, maybe even cultural nuances, all embedded in that tiny little chunk.
When you switch from just passively watching to actively engaging like this, using these techniques, you start unlocking this huge amount of learning potential that was always there, just hiding in plain sight.
Exactly. Even a scene you've seen a dozen times can become a completely new and exciting learning opportunity when you approach it with this active mindset. It's not just entertainment anymore.
It really makes you rethink how you watch things, doesn't it? You're not just consuming, you're actively dissecting and learning from authentic English, a few seconds at a time.
Precisely. And, speaking of authentic English skills, that can feel really challenging. We've talked a lot about understanding speech in movies, where you at least have visuals, faces, settings, actions to help you. But what about those situations where you have absolutely no visual cues, like over the phone?
Oh boy. Phone calls in English. That's a legendary source of stress and anxiety for so many language learners, isn't it?
It really is. You're relying 100% on the audio. Often the sound quality isn't perfect. There's no body language to read, no facial expressions to help you guess the meaning if you miss a word.
Yeah, it requires a totally different kind of listening focus and probably a whole different set of conversational tools and strategies.
It definitely presents its own unique set of challenges compared to talking face-to-face or even watching a movie. But just like understanding fast speech in films, it's absolutely a skill that can be learned and improved systematically.
Okay, good news there.
Yes. And that's exactly why our very next deep dive is going to be dedicated entirely to handling phone calls in English.
Oh, fantastic. What kind of things will we cover?
We'll guide you through the practical language and the specific strategies you need to feel more confident making and receiving calls. We'll tackle those often awkward moments right at the beginning and end. How do you start a call naturally? How do you end it politely? Going beyond just a basic hello and a sudden, okay, bye.
That's really needed. What else?
We'll equip you with essential, really useful phrases for common phone tasks. Things like making an appointment, maybe asking for specific information from a company, needing to leave a clear message, or just trying to get connected to the right person or department. We'll give you practical language frameworks for those situations.
And maybe the most important part for a lot of people.
Dealing with misunderstandings, which happen all the time on the phone, even for native speakers. We'll give you specific strategies and polite phrases for how to ask someone to repeat themselves, how to clarify if you think you understood correctly, how to gently ask someone to slow down if they're speaking too fast,
Oh, that's crucial.
and how to confirm important details like names, addresses, or numbers when you can't see them written down. We'll cover all of that.
Okay, that sounds incredibly useful. Definitely something listeners won't want to miss if phone calls feel like a hurdle.
Absolutely. It will provide practical tools and hopefully a good dose of confidence to navigate those phone conversations much more comfortably and effectively. So make sure you join us for that deep dive.
Definitely. So in the meantime, start putting today's techniques into practice. Go pick that short clip, do the 3 listening steps, try shadowing that one sentence. Discover just how much learning is waiting for you inside the shows and movies you already enjoy.
Remember, the best learning often integrates things you genuinely find fun. Using these active, targeted techniques with movies and TV makes the process engaging and, most importantly, really effective.
So take that first step today. Start watching, start listening actively, start shadowing.
Enjoy the process, enjoy the shows, and enjoy seeing your English improve. We'll see you next time for our deep dive into mastering phone calls.
And until then, keep listening, keep practicing, and enjoy learning English.